There's a whole crazy story behind it that I'm sure you want to hear. But before that, now that I've got your... Okay, so it all started like this. My mother, who I thought was dead, resurfaced into my life after 18 years. Quite a lot, right? Yeah, I know. And obviously, there's a whole crazy story behind it that I'm sure you want to hear. But before that, now that I've got your attention, just a quick reminder. Hit that subscribe button over there and make sure to activate the bell notification, because I am definitely not the only one telling crazy stories around here. Okay, now, back at it. What was I saying already? Oh yeah, my dead mother, who is not so dead but actually very much alive. So I had a relatively peaceful life, like any regular teenager of my age. I was living only with my dad. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to meet my mother. She died a few days after I was born in a tragic car accident. Or at least that was the official version of my life until I turned 18 years old. My dad raised me well. I was surrounded with love, and he always provided me with everything I needed. But as much as he loved me, he also betrayed me. Why? Because I was about to find out that my whole life was based on a lie, and a huge one. We were living in a small town, far from city noises. I remember as a kid going on hikes every weekend in the woods. From that period, I kept my adventurous side and my love of hiking. One day, I decided to go on a hike alone. I told my dad I'll be back in the evening, but as I was sinking into the woods, a huge storm abruptly started. Pouring rain, thunder, lightning, really, the whole package. I was trapped outside with literally no place to go. It was probably the only time I really got scared of being in the woods. While trying to work my way out of this mess, I suddenly spotted what seemed to be like an abandoned house. I rushed towards it, but the door was locked. I reflexively knocked, but knowing perfectly well that nobody was probably there to open up for me. Well, turns out I was wrong. As I was walking backwards trying to figure out my fate, I heard someone yelling, "Hey, you, over there! Come here! Come back! Hurry up, it's not safe outside right now!" I run back and I got into the house. A woman welcomed me. "Oh my God, you must be freezing! What are you doing alone in the woods?" she asked. "I like hiking. I live not so far from here, so I know the place. But the weather took me by surprise," I answered. "Do you live here?" "Yes, for 18 years now." How can she live in this place? I thought. The house was cold, dark, and very dirty. You know, like those shacks you find at the back of a yard and never go in because you're afraid that some monster might be living there or something? Well, that was exactly like that. Really unsuitable place to live. I was starving. "I would have offered you something to eat, but I already ate all the food I had for the day," she told me, ashamed and embarrassed. Poor lady, she was really struggling. An hour later, the storm started to cool down. I decided to stay a little bit more just to keep her company. I'm pretty sure I was the first human she spoke to in months. When I left, I was quite disturbed. That meeting was strange and intense at the same time, I thought on my way home. I literally connected with a stranger in an abandoned house in the middle of the woods during a storm. Usually, stories like that never have a happy ending. Weirdly or not, I never thought she could have hurt me or do me wrong. The bond with her was immediate, and some voices in my head told me that I should dig a little bit more and meet this lady again. I guess you can't fake a mother-daughter connection even if you're still not aware of it. So, I went back the next day. And the day after. Every day for 2 weeks. I was bringing her food, and we just sat down and talked, learning about each other. She was so happy to share things with me, and I was really moved by her. One day, we talked for so long, I forgot about the time and went back home very late. My dad was waiting for me in the living room, worried and pissed off. "Where were you? Are you out of your mind? I was looking for you everywhere," he yelled. "Sorry, Dad. I was in the woods. Didn't see how the time flew." "What were you doing in the woods all that time anyway? You're hiking too much lately. This has to stop. That's it. You're grounded. No more hiking for a month," he added. "Please, Dad, no!" I screamed. I couldn't imagine myself not going to the woods anymore and disappearing from this lady's life just like that. That would kill her. She trusted me so badly. At first, I didn't want to tell my dad about her, but given the emergency, I had no choice but to tell him. I thought maybe he would better understand me and be moved by the situation. But oh boy, was I wrong. What a mistake I made. When I started to tell my dad about that woman, his face literally turned red. He was way more pissed off than he was when I came back. I never saw him like that in my whole life. Listen to me carefully, young lady. If you ever want to see the color of the woods again in your life, don't you ever go back there to see this woman, you hear me? I forbid you to go anywhere near her. Are we clear? He said. Very clear, Dad, I just answered in a low voice. Actually, I was kind of scared of him right now. I never heard him yell at me like that, and I just couldn't understand why. How could he not be moved by this woman's story? She was just a poor lady, and we had the opportunity to help her. What was wrong with that? Well, I was about to find out. Obviously, all this drama my dad made raised my attention as well as my sense of contradiction. The next morning, after my dad left to work, I went back to the woods and to the abandoned house. You seem sad today, she noticed when I arrived. Did something happen? I told her everything. That I was supposed to be grounded, my dad's reaction, everything. Then her face turned red, just like my dad the day before. What's wrong with adults, for real? It all makes sense now. It all makes sense, she kept repeating out loud. What? What makes sense? I don't understand. She stopped for a minute and looked at me right in the eyes. Okay, sweetie, it might be weird to say it like that. You'll probably think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but I think I'm your mother. Sorry, my what? My mother? I don't think so. My mom died in a car accident after I was born, so you're probably mistaken. Maybe Dad was right after all. I shouldn't have come back here. It's probably better if I leave now. I have to be home early anyway, I said while walking to the door. Wait, is it your dad? She asked me while handing me a picture of him, younger. Now it was my face that turned red. It was really him. It was my dad. Hold on. How is it possible? How do you know my dad? And how can you be my mother? I asked. And then she told me everything, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It turns out my dad kidnapped me from my mother at the hospital just after I was born. Well, he didn't totally kidnap me because he informed the hospital while leaving with me. He told them my mother was psychologically unstable and that he was scared for our own safety. After that, she was completely lost and disoriented. She had a few jobs here and there, but she never fully recovered from what my dad did to her. That's why she ended up in this abandoned house. I told her my version of the story, the car accident version. Turns out my dad faked everything, with fake newspapers relating the incident, fake pictures, and even fake names. He told me my mother's name was Jessica, while her real name was Natalie. My whole life has been built on a lie so far. I couldn't believe it. But why would he do that? Why did he run away with me and abandon you? I asked. Few weeks after he disappeared, I learned on the news that he inherited a huge amount of money. Money that he obviously didn't want to share with his spouse, I guess. Wow. So all of this just because of money? Unbelievable. We did have money, that's a fact. But how can you sacrifice and destroy the lives of your loved ones just to protect your fortune? That's ridiculously crazy. Okay, wait, one last question, I added. How did you so quickly know that I might be your daughter? I mean, I just told you that my dad didn't want me to come here, but it's not like it's a big hint or something. She told me my dad and her met once, a few years ago, in the woods as well. He was hiking, passed near her house, and they just exchanged looks, but both knew who the other one was. Also, when she met me, she noticed a birthmark on my left hand, exactly the same as her, and it was her only memory of me after I was born. Now that I knew I had a mother, I couldn't be silent anymore. We had to do something. Take revenge on my dad for separating us. Mom, we have to do something. I will not let you stay here without taking revenge for what Dad did to you. We have to make him taste his own medicine. But how? She asked. I have an idea. I knew a couple of things about my dad, obviously. One, he has money. And two, he is a player. He loves women. Mixing these two things up, and you can easily touch his weakest spots. So we started plotting against him. All we had to do first was to get my mom a total new look so my dad can't recognize her, and then make her flirt with him. Again, just like the good old days, I guess. After a good haircut and hair dyeing, she was fully ready to go on our mission. I told her all the little details I knew about my dad that would make the difference, so she can seduce him properly and make him fall in the trap of love. After a few dates, that was a wrap. My dad was in love. He told me he wanted me to meet her. God, that was serious. So far, the plan was moving on perfectly. My mom went home for an official presentation dinner. God, it is so funny to even say this sentence. At the end of the dinner, as I was bringing out the dessert to the table, I saw my dad bending on his knee, asking my mother to marry him again. And technically, to become my stepmother. I guess that makes her twice my mom, right? God, that situation was awkward and funny. She said yes, obviously, in case you were wondering. And now begins the fun part. My dad was pleasantly surprised by the connection between me and my soon-to-be stepmother. I didn't expect you to get along so well with her, he told me. I'm impressed. And happy, of course. We are going to form an amazing family, he added. As the wedding day was approaching, my mother started to freak out a little bit. Are you sure this is going to work? You know what he is capable of if he finds out the truth. I won't be able to go through this again. Don't worry, Mom. Everything is going to be fine. I know Dad better than you do. I told you that I was going to protect you and get your revenge, and that's exactly what is going to happen. The D-Day arrived, and just like when it all started, it was a rainy day, just like the day I first met my mother. Oh, the irony. But you know what they say, a wet bride is a lucky bride. Well, it couldn't have been more true. The wedding went well. The groom and the bride were lovely. Everyone was happy, including me. And not just because of what was going to happen next. Believe it or not, even after all these crazy things that I learned about my family and my life, it still moved me to see my actual father and actual mother getting married. Who would have thought? Not me in a million years. Okay, enough with the feelings. Back to business. During the night of the wedding party, my mother managed to escape from her room with my dad and join me. I was waiting for her in the car with our passports and suitcases. The plan was to go straight to the airport and leave the country to a very far place where no one would find us again. Where did you get all the money for that, you ask? Well, it turns out my dad was so in love with my mother that he didn't even bother to make her sign a prenup contract. So technically, she was the owner of at least half of his fortune. And this was without including all the real estate and some of my dad's companies that she was automatically the co-owner of. So yes, we were rich. We just took what was ours and left, and ruined my dad. Before leaving, my mother left the key of her abandoned house on my dad's desk, just in case he needed a new place to stay, you know. That's how you get revenge. How you get revenge.
Hi there, I'm Mike. Thanks for joining me. Today, for My Story Animated, I'm going to tell you how I pretended to be a policeman to date girls. I went all the way. I even wore a uniform. You won't believe how fast the seemingly innocent joke escalated. Things became too dangerous, too fast. From day one, as I walked on the streets, people looked at me with respect. Some of them even bowed as they saw me. It didn't take more than 2 days to realize the power that uniform had. I saw a dude about to cross the street and told him to wait for the sign. He looked at me really scared and waited. No questions asked. He even lowered his gaze. A speeding car slowed down as it passed next to me. This was so much fun. I saw a couple of hot girls walking in my direction, and I stopped them and asked them for their IDs. They didn't seem scared. They even smiled at me and offered me their phone numbers. That night, my ex-girlfriend was throwing a party at her house. She'd broken up with me in front of the entire school, so I decided to show up for a little payback. I dressed as a cop, and as I walked over there, I started to see some people gossiping and going away from the party. I entered the house and shouted, "Police, hands up!" Before they even cared to see who I was, they were already on the run. The house was empty in no more than 2 minutes. Nancy, my ex-girlfriend, appeared not knowing what was going on. And when she saw me, her jaw dropped. She said, "Mike, what the hell?" I laughed hard in her face and said, "Oh, I wasn't invited?" Before she could answer me, I was already walking out of the house. "You'll pay for this," I heard her shouting in the distance. The next day, I decided to call on one of the girls that gave me her phone number the day before. We went out for a drink. I was wearing the police uniform to look cooler. She took a picture of us and tagged me on Instagram. Nancy would probably see it. Good. We were chatting and having fun when suddenly we heard someone screaming. A woman on the street was complaining about a thief that had just stolen her purse and was running away. The girl that was with me told me to go after him. I told her that it wasn't necessary, that some other cop would catch him, but she insisted. She even said it was for our country or something like that. Damn. I started to run after the guy, shouting, "Police, stop!" It felt kind of powerful, I have to admit. I played football at school, so I ran pretty fast. A couple of other policemen were on the chase as well, but I quickly outran them and continued to chase the thief. What was I thinking? I was having an adrenaline rush. I got closer to the thief and shouted, "Hands up or I'll shoot!" I didn't have a gun, of course, but I heard that all the time in the movies, and it sounded awesome. The thief stopped, dropped the purse, and turned around. As he saw I didn't really have a gun, he tried to pick the purse back up, but the other cops were getting closer. So he left it and ran away. I grabbed the purse, still panting, and gave it to the policeman. "It's your catch," one of them said, and gave it back to me. "You should give it back to the lady. That would definitely make me look good in front of my date." We got back and I gave the purse to the woman. All the people there bursted into applause and my date kissed me. It was so cool. But 2 seconds later, one of the cops said we should head back to the station to write the report. What? What report? I acted naturally in front of the girl, but I had no idea what they were talking about. I told her we would have to reschedule our date for another time and kissed her in front of everyone. I was starting to feel uncomfortable in the uniform. I felt taller. We arrived at the station and the chief of police came to congratulate me. I was scared for a moment, thinking that they might find out I didn't belong there. But he didn't care about that. He started to say that I was a great example for the station and that he needed more brave men like me. It was awesome. I felt huge. But then he said they had an operative that same afternoon and that he wanted me there. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. Things were escalating fast. I couldn't tell him I wasn't really a cop. That would be the confession of a felony. And I already was inside the police station, so they would surely lock me down. I had to play along. They took me to a conference room with all the other cops, and the chief started to talk about the strategy for the operative. As I heard the words marina, containers, and mafia, I started to get really scared. Then he started to talk in some sort of code as he pointed at us. Alpha, Echo, Tango, Foxtrot. He was talking so fast. What the hell was he talking about? Later, I discovered that those were code words for the alphabet. But I had no idea why he was using them. He separated us into teams of 4, and we all went to change our clothes. I followed them and did exactly as they did. They gave me a bulletproof vest, and I had to hide my shaking hands as I put it on. I remembered my date with that gorgeous girl from that morning, and now it seemed like years ago. With the rest of the team, we got inside a van. They were all dressed in black from head to toe, but they were chilling and making jokes, so I relaxed a bit. I heard one of them talking to me. "Is this your first mission, kid?" he asked. I nodded in silence and swallowed after the word kid. What was I doing? I wanted to cry. I felt so cool a couple of hours ago. "Don't worry," he said. "Just stay behind us. Try not to get shot." Wait, what? Shot? And then he handed me a loaded gun. Man, it was so heavy. I never grabbed a gun before. When we arrived at the marina, it was already noon. They all got out first, and before I got out, I slowly hid the gun under my seat. There was no way I was going to carry that with me. They moved fast and spread out. I was suddenly alone in the middle of the road. A new and very different adrenaline rush got to me. It gave me the strength to run fast and hide under a container. I heard they were talking on the radio. Again, they were using those strange code words. "India, November, Mike," I heard. "What?" I said, "I'm here." I thought they were talking to me. I didn't know Mike was another code word, but I got no answer. Oh man, I was so stressed. I didn't understand anything. Everything was happening so fast. From under the container, I saw feet moving from one side to another. And then, in the distance, I saw a huge luxurious yacht arriving at the pier. "That's them, let's go," I heard on the radio. But I was alone, and I was definitely not going to get out of my hiding spot. I saw the rest of the team as they got closer to the yacht. And then, the shooting began. I covered my ears and hid again. The sound of the gunfire was so loud. Something inside me told me it was not a good idea to stay there anymore. So I got up and ran away from the shooting as fast as I could. My mind was blank. I couldn't think of anything but surviving. After a couple of minutes, I saw that someone was running in front of me, and as he saw me, he started to run faster. I thought he was running away too, so I followed him. It didn't take me long to reach him, and when he saw how close I was, he stopped, turned around, and tried to hit me. The adrenaline in my body had improved my senses and my reflexes. I kind of felt like Spider-Man. I didn't know how, but I dodged the fist that was coming fast towards my face, and without even thinking about it, I closed my fist and hit him instead. The guy fell to the floor in a second. He didn't move again. Oh my God, was he dead? Did I just kill a man? I was in so much trouble. I was too scared to touch him, but I couldn't take my eyes off him either. I simply stood there, shaking. And then I heard on the radio it was over. Mike has him, I heard. Were they talking in code again? All the cops came running to where I was, and they started to cheer as they saw who the man was on the floor. I was still in shock and didn't understand much, but apparently the guy I just hit was the head of the gang. When they turned him over, I saw he had a gun on his belt. And that was it. If he'd used his gun instead of his fist, I would probably be dead. I don't think any adrenaline would be enough to dodge a bullet. I thought of the bullet in my stomach and instantly threw up. I was so embarrassed. The rest of the cops started to laugh as they grabbed me and hugged me. It was so confusing. They took me back to the van as they celebrated the victory. One of them confessed that he threw up on his first operative too, and they all laughed again. As we went back to the station, I started to feel the pain in my hand. One of the cops said that the adrenaline blocks the pain for a while, but it had been quite a punch. As we entered the station and I thought nothing else could happen to make this day worse, I saw my dad. He was standing there with the chief of police on one side and Nancy on the other. What was my ex-girlfriend doing there? And the explanation came fast in my mind. She'd seen the picture of me and the girl on Instagram and gave me away. You see, my dad was a true cop, and the uniform I wore to get chicks was in fact his. He'd been out of town for a few days, so I took the chance. I was in so much trouble. Now, they would surely lock me away and Nancy would have won again, making me look like a fool in front of everyone. But instead of giving me a lesson, my dad started to smile and cheer with the rest of the cops in there. Nancy ran towards me, hugged me, and kissed me as she said, "My hero." I was puzzled. I didn't know how to react. What the hell was going on? My dad also hugged me and said he was proud of me, that he always expected me to follow his steps, and now that I was finishing school, it would be the perfect future. He even started talking about a scholarship being arranged and everything. But I didn't want to be a cop. I used it as a disguise to get girls and to make Nancy jealous. And after the terrible experience I just lived, all I wanted to do was run away from there as fast as possible. I wouldn't mind if I never saw a policeman again. But I couldn't go anywhere. I was the center of attention. Everyone was looking at me, asking me questions. Apparently, no one seemed to care at all the fact that I wasn't really a policeman. My dad was telling everyone that it ran in the family. He was so proud. Nancy didn't leave my side either. She was too comfortable with me being famous and her being my girlfriend. And that proved that the uniform was a great idea to date chicks. But now I realize I had gone too far. Not only did I not want to be a cop, but my life had been in real danger. The chief said they were going to set an act to give me a medal for my bravery. I had to get out of there. Since Nancy didn't leave my side, I told her I had to go to the bathroom. I went inside and climbed out through the window. As I saw some policemen outside, I hid inside the building next to the police station. The cops continued walking, and when I looked up, I realized I was inside the fire department. This was actually great. I could definitely disguise as a fireman, because firemen had to cover their faces to work. No one would know it was me, and I could escape. So I went into the dressing room and put a suit on. I put the helmet on and hid inside the fire truck. I was sure they wouldn't find me there. But suddenly, a very loud siren started to sound, and I had to cover my ears again. Someone ran inside the fire department and shouted, "Fire!" This was not happening. I hid inside the truck and stood silent as a lot of men started to appear from every side. They suited up quickly, and they all got inside the truck. With no time to lose, all the trucks left the station. I got up and saw at least 7 other men dressed like me on the truck. They were busy setting up the equipment and paid no attention to me. I looked down to see if I could jump off the truck, but we were speeding. The noise was deafening. But it served to make everyone in traffic open a spot for us. It was kind of cool to pass every red light and to see the police on the streets cheering for us. Maybe I wouldn't get girls in this uniform, but it certainly made me feel cool too. Not even a second later, I started to feel comfortable in this new uniform. The trucks turned around the corner and a huge fire appeared in front of us. A building of at least 10 stories was burning up fast. We heard screams from the balconies. Everywhere I looked, it was chaos. Some firemen took out their fire hoses and aimed them directly toward the fire. One of the men was struggling with his hose, so I quickly lent him a hand and between the two of us handled it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but the chaos didn't give me time to think. Other firemen were using the special ladders on the trucks to bring down the people from the balconies. Suddenly, an explosion came out from the building and hurt one of the firemen on the ladders. They were trying to bring down an old lady, so without hesitating, I climbed onto the ladder and helped the fireman. We brought down the old woman just in time to see the whole building collapsing. She was the last one. Everyone was safe. With the furious water coming out of the hoses, the fire was finally extinguished. As the ambulances appeared to help the wounded, I saw a million reporters arriving at the scene. I had to run away. I couldn't let my face be seen. But as I walked slowly away, a few firemen grabbed me and started to jump in celebration. They took each other's helmets off, and I couldn't hold on to mine in time. Damn. My face was now clear in front of the cameras. My father was probably seeing it. I wanted to die. Apparently, this was the day of the hero, but I didn't feel like one. I felt ashamed. I didn't deserve the applause. I realized that all my life, I'd lived surrounded by anonymous heroes, and instead of respecting them, I used to make fun of them, not knowing to what extent they risk their lives every day. It only took me a second to understand. So, as the camera was pointing at me and the reporter was offering me the microphone, I said exactly that. The men around me were the true heroes, the men that dedicated their lives to serving and protecting others, not only firemen, but the policemen as well. I learned the hard way why those uniforms were powerful and what they really represented. Of course, people would look at them with respect and fear. Of course, girls would want to date those brave men. But I also realized that they weren't jobs for me. I've tasted a sample, and I wasn't ready to dedicate my life to any of them. It was an act of cowardice, I knew. But trust me, real life has nothing to do with the movies. As I saw the reporters and the audience shift to other firemen, and as I heard the police sirens in the distance, I realized it was time for me to disguise and escape one last time. I saw a medical gown inside one of the ambulances, so I got in, closed the door, and changed. Then I opened the back door, left the fireman uniform on the street, and got inside the passenger seat of the ambulance. I saw my dad's car passing the ambulance, so I lowered my head and hid. I sighed, and a second later, I heard on the ambulance radio that there had been an accident a few blocks away. I opened the door to get out, but the paramedic got inside, on the driver's seat, and said, "Great to see you're free, let's go." Oh man, can this day get any worse? I didn't dare answer that as the ambulance left at full speed, at full speed, at full.